The scariest thing in the world that I have ever found, I think, is the way that knowledge refuses to die, but rather resurrects itself and commits the same evil as it has always done. When I was a young man, I had a friend called Gilbert who had a lovely, lovely, wholesome wife. And I remember asking one day how on earth he had met such a trooper, such a treasure. And he smiled and said, "It's strange, we met in Italy. She was the companion to a rich old noblewoman." And I patted him on the shoulder and said, "So you seduced her with love rather than money." And I remember Gilbert's face went very long. He was quite an eminent doctor. And he said, "No." And he shivered. He said, "I don't know why. I don't know why I don't like talking about it. Neither of us do. It's strange. After all this time, I don't know what to make of it." "Do you want to tell me?" I asked. He said, "Well, when she was a young girl, Annie, that was his wife, mother was destitute. And so Annie went to a job agency looking for an employment. Now, she has no skills, not then. But she's so eminent. It was me. I realized her skills in maths and put her through her degree. But when she was 18, she had been too headstrong for school, and not wanting to stay, had left to try and earn money for her mother, but both of them to no avail. But her mother was very old-fashioned in her ways, and suggested that the best thing her daughter could do was to become a companion, a governess, perhaps, to some rich woman who could show her the world, give her the education her mother couldn't afford to do. That's a strange sort. Oh, I think Annie's mother had high ideals. Sometimes when she's drunk, she'll still talk about her grandfather, who was some sort of baronet. And her mother brought her up to the idea that she would marry a noble son. And when she, at the age of 30, gave birth to Annie without hope, to a man who disappeared, it kind of broke her heart and made her even more old-fashioned in her desires for her daughter. Did you like her mother? She was all right. She died 10 years ago now. I didn't mind her. Annie was devoted to her in a pitch that sometimes happens between only mothers and their daughters. But it was not of that I wanted to talk of. Be that as it, so Annie went to one of the few job agencies that still specialised in setting up young ladies as governesses or companions to older women. I suppose it's kind of au pairs, but for toffs. Yeah, I suppose so. And Annie went, and they took her details, and they asked her what she had, and when she confessed that she had left school with nothing. Nothing? No, nothing. They looked at her long and hard and said, "We don't get that kind of work round here. You could try somewhere else. Go to the job centre." "Is there nothing?" Annie said. "Do you never get work?" And the woman in charge of the agency looked at her long and hard and said, "We run an agency to find governesses and intelligent companions for elder ladies. Airheads need not apply. But if you pay me well enough, I'll see what I can do." So Annie gave her money. All the money she had, she told me, still angry. And waited and waited and waited. For 4 weeks she waited. And then she went back, going to ask her money back if it was hopeless. But when she came in, the old woman was the woman in charge of the agency was not alone. Sitting huddled in front of the radiator was a little old woman. So impossibly old it seemed unremarkable that she was alive at all, and yet her face was red, and her eyes sparkled. It was a strange face, Annie said. Kind of all nose and chin and bright, bright eyes. Oh, there was a mouth if you looked, but it was lost in old wrinkles. A face to make the dogs bark. Like a mask almost. Well, the woman in charge of the agency, Mrs. Dalrymple, said, "Well, Annie, I've managed to find you someone. This is a noblewoman of Italian birth." "Amongst others," said the woman, who looked at Annie up and down. "She'll do." "Who always comes to here to hire her young women." "Why does she hire many?" said Annie. "I have had my few." "It's strange. I hire them. They claim that they are healthy. I take them to spas around Europe. But they all lie. They all succumb in the end." "Succumb?" "To death." That is not my concern. It is nothing that I do." Annie took a step back, and she was going to say that she would not take this job under such sinister providence. But Mrs. Dalrymple looked angry and said, No, we have doctor's certificates. The good woman here, the lady, is not to blame that her companions have developed some sort of anorexia. That's what the doctor said for one. And the other one, that they had anemia. It was not her fault. And Annie said, "Well, I have neither. I am healthy and happy." "Well," said Mrs. Dalrymple, "if you do not take this commission, I do not think I can help you." And the old woman looked at her and said, You'll do, Annie. Come, work for Lady Lafayette." And Annie said she felt hypnotized by those eyes. And before she knew quite what she was doing, she had signed a contract, and the old lady had paid her already £5,000 to help her set her up and to give her mother an income. Well, that's very generous. Well, that was what it was going to be. £5,000 every quarter. 20,000 a year. And food and lodgings. For doing what? Nothing much. Being there, reading to the old lady, travelling with her, or as the woman said, Madame Fayette, brightening my days and helping in the nights. Well, in less than a week, Annie found herself just south of Genoa, on the sea, in a beautiful Italian spa where if you climbed up high enough, you could see the far-off Alps. And at first, she read me her diary. She was so happy. All that time in London, she had never tasted an olive or an artichoke. And Madame Lafayette loved feeding her delicacies she could not dream of. "I want you to grow fatter and yet fatter," she said. The old lady's establishment was quite small. There was a French maid and a doctor, the personal physician of Madame Fayette, an Italian who she said she always travelled with. His name was Polydore. "He is a strange, waxen figure," she says in her diary. "Strange. I could have been scared of him, but he's so kind. The other day I came in, and although it's October, a little late, I had a very bad mark on my arm, like a mosquito, and he treated it with some kind of dressing. And I felt better at once. And he told me always to come to him when I have such marks, and he will treat them well. But I'll always do that, because I did feel a lot better. But that was the only downside. I have eaten so well, I have drunk so much wine," she wrote to her mother. I've eaten walnuts for the first time. She described then boat rides and trips to rocky islands and how she made friends with a couple. That was me and my sister. We were there in Genoa. My poor Lottie. She was never very healthy. We used to go there in winter because she couldn't cope with the damp in England. I remember you told me. Poor Lottie. Well, in those days I thought she might get better in the sunlight. So we were spending the winter there, and we met Annie. And at first Annie felt her luck seemed to rub off on everyone, and she made us all laugh. But as I watched her, I began to worry. Her face seemed to get paler. She spent more time looking out the window. I used to ask her how her mistress was, and she said, "Fine, I do nothing for her. All I do is read to her for an hour a day, and that seems to be it. And she's happy with me. Dismisses me, tells me to run off and play, only makes me come back to mealtimes, and then she feeds me so well. It could be," and then she didn't say anything. "Now, as chance would have it," Gilbert said, I had decided with my sister Lottie that we would go to the Italian Lake District for the midwinter, because the air there is dry and cold, and we thought it might do her good. So, leaving a note of our address at the hotel, we rode off. And I didn't see Annie for a month. She wrote to me that she had developed a cough and felt that she was pretty ill, but there was nothing wrong with her, that Polydore looked at her and said that she was just unused to the food and to the climate. How Madame Lafitte had been so careful with her health, had looked after Annie. And then there was another letter. This was a little odder. Where she said she'd overheard a conversation. Two English people who didn't know she was listening, talking about Madame Fayet and how old she was. "Strange," the doctor, one of them had said. "I've heard her talk as if she remembers Napoleon III and the Second Empire. But that's nearly 100 years ago or more." "Well, I wouldn't be surprised," said the other. "I wouldn't be surprised. She looks like a waxwork, and that doctor of hers is no better. He's some sort of relic out of the end of the 19th century. I heard him mucking about with camphor and all kinds of opiates. It's the girl I feel sorry for. She looks peaky, doesn't she? What's she called?" "Oh, she's called Annie." "Ah, well, maybe she'll go like the last. She had a different girl, didn't she, 5 years ago? And another one before that." And so they left. I remember I asked the French maid, and the French maid would say nothing, only that I was starting to sound like them. And I keep on having this recurring dream. In this dream, I feel like I'm falling down. And then I wake at the bottom, and I feel as if I am awake. My eyes are open, and yet I cannot see anything. And my heart is pumping out blood into the world, as if I was a source for all the springs of the world. And when I wake up, I'm always weak. And it's odd. A mosquito has always bitten me. Now, when I heard that, I was worried. It's December. There are no mosquitoes in Genoa in December. But anyway, I suggested to Madame Lafitte that they might like to come to where we were staying, around Lake Aosta, because of the beautiful dry air. I told her it was very healthy. I told her that I'd read somewhere that it was the secret of immortality, the air of the Alps. And so it was. Just before Christmas they arrived. And there was Annie, cold and listless. I touched her skin and it was so cold. And she was pale. And she installed with the loving care of her daughter her mistress, and by the fire, and I saw her shiver as she did so. And her mistress looked her up and down and said, "Annie, I thought you told me you were healthy." And Annie said, "I was." But then I said to Annie, she needs a boat ride. And I took her off, but before we went anywhere, I gave her a tonic. What was in your tonic? I am not saying. It was a professional secret, but it seemed to revive Annie. And we went for a boat ride on the river, on the lake, with Lottie, rowing out to the monastery where the saint lies in his splendour. Dead for centuries. Oh yes, quite dead. And Annie looked at him with morbid relish and then turned to me and said, "Oh, it feels so alive." And I said to her at last, "Are they treating you badly?" And he said, "No, no. The madam is as kindness itself." And the doctor? He does his best. He treats me when I'm bit by mosquitoes. And I took her arms, and she pointed, and her arm was indeed marked by a pair of long, thin incisions. To the untrained eye, they looked like teeth. But you knew better. Oh, I knew what they were. A syringe in, and a syringe out. I got her to tell me of her dreams, how she felt she was falling into a darkness that was awake. And then I wrote a note, and I got it to pass it on to her mistress, telling her that I had found a cure in the air for that ail she seeked. Ah, I see. And sure enough, the mistress called me before her, sending Annie to bed. It was 11 o'clock. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Annie's room was very peculiar. It was always inside her mistress's room. She would always have some corner of her own, a dressing room, perhaps, curtained off for herself. So in the night there was no escaping. And I went in, and you said what? Well, I said to the noble old woman, "What are you doing to my Annie?" "I know the marks of syringes. Polydore, let me see what you are doing." And Polydore said, "I do know nothing. I say nothing. What I do and have done. It has been done before. It will be done again. For in blood lies the secret of life." "Shut up," said Polydore, said a voice. It was the old woman. "I am tired of your nostrums. Your cures might have been good 50 years ago or so, when we first begun them. But I am growing old. There is danger in what you do, in the blood that you take from the young girls, and you take too much. But it keeps you alive," he replied. "Only just. I would be young again. You say you have found the secret to my ailment?" "What did you say?" I looked at her long and hard, and I said, "How old are you?" And she said, "I was born the year of the restoration of the monarchy in France. 150 years. 150 years, yes. And I have lived and outlived my time. I've outlived all the beauties of the court. I've outlived my people, and here I am. And that is because of me. But you are losing it, aren't you? You fill me full of blood, but it does not course as it used to. It does not do it as it used to. So what cure have you for me?" The old woman turned to me with a dreadful look, and I smiled and said, "There is but one cure. You've outworn your time. As the barking dogs look at your face remind you, it is time to die." And she creased up in fury. And then a tear fell, just the one. And she said, Would you not have done what I have done if you had the chance? I don't know, I am not you, I replied. But I know you have done enough. Let them go. Let my Annie go. And she turned to Polydore and said, You may go. I never want to see you again. I shall pay you off and go. Too many have died for your cures. And so I said to her, Be brave. Go where you must. And she turned and said, All right. And then she wrote a note to my Annie saying, Go, you're fired, but I will pay you for the advice of your future husband. Treasure him. And what did she do? She enclosed a check for 2 years' pay. 40,000? Enough to put Annie through university, yes. And that was that. Annie, of course, had lost her blood, a lot of blood. She was down to about 4 pints. And did you hear what happened to Madame Lafitte? I heard afterwards that she died before the spring. And Polydore? I don't know. He disappeared to practice that dark art of his that will keep one alive by killing another for a while, but not forever. And always the weight of conscience lies on the murderess, and the threat that they are a vampire lies heavy on their soul at the last, I think. Yes, old ideas that refuse to die. Oh, I like old women that refuse to get old. A menace. Thank you.